Hello, everyone, and welcome again to this Tuesday, December the 3rd, Organic News on Awake Radio. We will be having at 6:20 Adam Kokesh, who spent 4 months in jail for posting a video of himself. I believe he was loading a rifle at Freedom Plaza in DC. Adam has been known to, push the limit, which, is definitely something that I believe that we have to start doing. Of course, the few people that are doing it are going to have a harder time of it. It's not always so easy. I don't always agree with what other people do. He had plans to do an action inviting, gun owners to have an loaded open carry down at the Freedom Plaza in DC for July the 4th. And I definitely planned on attending that with my camera, of course, because I do not have any firearms as of yet. And then that action had gotten canceled. And I understood. I wasn't sure how I felt about it, but I was definitely planning on going down there to film and take pictures and videos. And so instead, he opted for posting this video of himself, and the powers that be pretty much stepped in and put him in jail for 4 months. So we're going to find out what that was like, how that maybe changed him, what his plans are. But he'll be on at 20 past, so that's like another 15 minutes, actually 16 minutes. But for now, I wanted to talk about last night. There was a protest in front of one of the upscale hotels here in New York City against David Petraeus, and also against the New York Historical Society, who was honoring David Petraeus as, with some honor or award of achievement. What achievement that was, I really don't know, but I have an email that invited me to this event, and I just wanted to read a bit what it says about, it says, war criminal Petraeus honored. We will bring signs, bring your own, and help make the presence larger and louder. Okay, his war crime charges: complicity in the commission of a war crime, plunder of public and private property, failure to protect civilians, oversaw the surge in Iraq and the escalation of the war in Afghanistan, overall responsibility for missile and drone attacks into Pakistan, responsible for the operation of torture prisons in Iraq and Afghanistan, complicity in the commission of a war crime, wanton destruction of cities and villages, devastation not justified by military necessity, ill treatment of civilian population of or in occupied territory. I got somewhat familiar with David Petraeus in the documentary Dirty Wars that I went to the premiere, and Dr. Cornel West and Jeremy Scahill himself were there doing a Q&A, and David Petraeus was kind of the focus. He was in that documentary, and they showed him as being, the one person that was overseeing the torture of the detainees in that documentary. So it also kind of goes on to talk a bit about his primary associations: chairman of the investment firm Kohlberg Kravis Roberts, newly created KKR Global Institute, supporting its investment teams and portfolio companies, studying new investments, and especially in new parts of the world. Visiting professor of policy studies at McCullough Honors College at City University of New York started August the 1st, of which, the CUNY students have been protesting and actually forcing him out of the school. Petraeus said in a statement that he would be teaching a seminar that examines the developments that could position the United States and our North American partners to lead the world out of the current global economic slowdown. University of Southern California, I'm listing his primary associations. University of Southern California, as a member of its faculty, he will be teaching classes and also mentor ROTC members. Another association, non-resident senior fellow at Harvard University's Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs. His war crime charges are listed as complicity in the commission of a war crime, plunder of public and private property, failure to protect civilians. Okay, I read that already. Okay, and then there's just like a links of what you could click on more to gain more information. Okay, so then I am going to just play. It's a bit loud. There were a lot of people chanting at this protest. There wasn't that many people. Maybe if there were 100 people, that's pretty generous. But this is just a few words from a CUNY teacher and why she's protesting David Petraeus.
So why are you out here? I'm a teacher, and I was a teacher at CUNY. I'm supporting the CUNY Internationalist Clubs. And what is happening this year is there's an attempt to rehabilitate Petraeus as a visiting professor at CUNY and as a noted member of the community.
Or does he need a new job or something?
Yes, they gave him a job as a visiting professor at CUNY.
What happened to his general status?
Well, he had to step down as general because of a scandal, if you remember what happened.
Oh, so they're trying to
They're trying to recycle him. And meanwhile, he's responsible for the murder of millions of people around the world. And we don't think that he should be getting honors at any historical society because he's a war criminal. And we don't think he should be teaching at CUNY. And the protests at CUNY have already driven him off the campus. He has to teach in a building that has no name on it on the 40th floor because the students have come out and protest against it.
Does anybody show up to his classes? What is he teaching? What subject?
That's a really good question. Some kind of history or something, or warfare. But we say CUNY is not a war college. Yeah. We went him off now. So that's what it's about.
Thank you. Okay, so that was just a view from one woman. Not aware of exactly what he's going to be teaching, but I mean, they're obviously trying to pass him off as some sort of, war hero in some kind of counterinsurgency expert or something. Of course, he's there to be protecting all of us from the terrorists that are about to attack the United States, which, again, people rightfully in these countries get fed up with this country, not, for being jealous, but for the fact that this country is just violating their civil rights like it is now doing to American citizens. I was actually going to play a bit of, here, let me, I'll try this one. Hopefully it's not too loud.
Hey! ROTC, go away! Workers of CUNY shout! We want Petraeus out! Students of CUNY say! ROTC, go away! Workers of CUNY shout! We want Petraeus out! Students of CUNY say! ROTC, go away! Workers of CUNY shout! We want Petraeus out!
That was a good one.
Yeah.
Deb, do you want to go now?
Sure.
So this protest is for Petraeus, who's getting some kind of a ridiculous award.
He's getting an award from the New York Historical Society as a person of achievement.
And what did he supposedly achieve, according to them?
You know, he led U.S. forces in Iraq. He led U.S. forces in Afghanistan. He led the Central Command. He led the CIA. He's a major figure in U.S. imperialist policy and leadership over the last 15 years. And even before that, he has a very bloody history of being involved in El Salvador and other places where the U.S. was asserting its domination over small countries.
Wasn't he the one in the Dirty Wars documentary that was kind of overseeing of the torture that was going on?
Yeah, he was involved in what happened in Abu Ghraib. He was in charge when there were secret special operation prisons in Iraq that still have never been fully accounted for. He was in charge of special operations. He's the architect of the surge in 2006 and 7, which killed hundreds of thousands of people in Iraq and led to this bloody increase in sectarian violence. He is the architect of night raids in Afghanistan that are still continuing. This is one of the reasons the U.S. can't even get its own lackey, President Hamid Karzai, to agree for them to stay longer, but because the U.S. won't give up on killing civilians in their homes at night.
And what is the point of that?
This is the point of projecting U.S. power all over the world. He became a master of it, and he was brought down for reasons we don't fully understand when he briefly led the CIA. But this has been a disaster, and to honor him in New York City, in the middle of the empire, is completely unacceptable.
And I know, like, we discussed this topic over and over, this ridiculous idea that the troops are over there to be helping somehow.
5, 6, 7,
Over the
8.
Middle East is completely
1, 2, 3, 4.
But they're really over there to just gain control and take over.
Well, they're over there to assert U.S. domination in all of the Middle East, in particular, and really all over the world.
Okay, I'm just gonna, it is a bit loud, but that is Deborah Sweet of World Can't Wait. She is pretty much a regular at protests wherever I go. I see her there. She's pretty knowledgeable and has been, World Can't Wait is I believe it's about an 8-year-old organization. She's been doing things for quite some time, so she knows a lot of things. So it was a bit loud there, but I think you can kind of hear her pretty well saying that he's been a major figure in leading these wars, and she called it the surge in Iraq, which I believe means he requested extra troops and got them. And night raids, torture, and it's really just about exerting power, U.S. power over other countries under this guise of helping or protecting other people from terrorism. And I also have videos on my YouTube channel with Malalai Joya, who at 2 times spoke and saying that the U.S. is not over there helping, and the Afghanistan people would like them to just leave and leave them to their, to work things out for themselves. So anyway, that's what's going on. Also, the New York Historical Society last year gave this award to Henry Kissinger, was another one of their choices. I mean, even though he's deceased, I'm surprised they don't give this award to Hitler. just because he's deceased. I mean, why should that stop them? I mean, it would kind of be following suit along with what they value to be giving their awards of achievement to. I don't know, maybe Hitler would be a little bit too blatant, I don't know. But anyhow, that's what was going on last night. Petraeus has had a history. I mean, it's been in the news when he tries to go to teach at CUNY. I was told he's only supposed to be teaching this Mulcahy school, that only one school, and he gets booed. 6 students, I believe, got arrested for protesting him teaching. I mean, calling him what they believe. I mean, it seems to be a pretty well-known fact that this guy is a war criminal, and yet he's being given this award of achievement by the New York Historical Society. So I didn't think I was going to be able to do it, but at the last minute, I did go into the hotel, and I thought I would give it a try and see if they would let me in as a media person, and just to see if I could get in and take some pictures, record some video. I would have loved to be a fly on the wall in there, but you have to get security clearance, of course, in advance. And so I got the card of someone that works for the Historical Society telling me that they could email me some photographs. And so I took the card. I was willing. I didn't think they were going to let me in, of course, but so that ought to be interesting to get a couple of pictures, see if what kind of story that these pictures tell. So anyway, in 1 minute we'll get Adam Kokesh on the line, and
you're listening to Awake Radio, straight talk for the awake and aware.
Okay, so we have no technical difficulties this time. We have Adam Kokesh with us, and I want to thank you for being available to be on. I don't know if you know me, remember me. I mean, I've seen you at Pork Fest last year, Anarchy, NYC. I think I was at Florida, that Ron Paul event that they had in Florida last year. And
absolutely. We have a history in the movement.
Right, but I've never formally met you. I just see you at these events. And I wanted to your action that was planned for July the 4th, the open carry. I was totally planning on attending that with my camera, of course.
Mm-hmm. Well, why of course?
Why of course?
Mm-hmm.
Because, okay, know, I mean, I've been kind of, in my own way, doing things and saying things for quite a while. And we need to do something serious. Exactly what to do, how to do it. I mean, of course, it's, nobody knows. And
that's not true.
Okay.
I figured it out, actually.
Okay. So then, share with us.
You want to jump straight to the conclusion and the solutions and all that? I mean, don't we have some catching up to do first?
Yeah, I mean, however you want to, I mean, if you don't mind, just to give people maybe who aren't familiar, and maybe a refresher even as to how you got, woken up. I know you were in the military, and if you don't mind, just kind of maybe giving a brief description of that.
Well, I wish I knew how I got here. It's been certainly a wonderful, beautiful, overwhelming an exciting experience, and I hope everybody gets as much out of life as I have and plan to and am currently doing. But yes, I was in the military. I was in Fallujah in 2004 with the Marines and earned a combat action ribbon while I was there. And came home and got involved with the Iraq Veterans Against the War, which was a very important experience for me. And, I have to be very humble about, process of waking up to the nature of government, at least. I don't like talking about being woken up in any more general terms than that, because, it suggests that other people are asleep. And the reality is that some people aren't aware of certain things, and some people are oblivious to certain things, and some people have their attentions focused on things that we think reduce quality of life, and we have a suggestion, I would hope, to improve quality of life for those people. And I don't think that I ever really got to be awake from a sleep. I don't think that really works as an analogy, at least from my experience, and my humility comes from the fact that it took me 10 years, really, to get to the point where I feel like I had a philosophical grasp on what liberty is and what it means, what it can do for the world and society, why people are so passionate about it, despite in so many ways not fully understanding it. But I was a libertarian in high school, back when it was like, well, shucks, I'm not going to be a Republican or a Democrat. That's lame. That's so mainstream. I'm going to be the punk. What are my options? And libertarianism made a lot of sense, but it really did take 10 years before, going from, being nominally a libertarian to really having the framework. And that's part of what, I've dedicated my life to now is sharing that and wanting to share that philosophy. That's what I'm working on now, is a manifesto, as a short book that I hope is going to be an effective way for people to develop what I find that I've gotten from my life experience, that which is most valuable, my philosophical perspective on the world and on society and what it means to be a free, beautiful, independent human being.
So let me just ask you, if I could, what was it that made you join the Veterans for Peace? Like, what was it about the war, and what did you see that that made you say, hey, I'm not for this?
Well, it's funny because David, you asked the question that way. A major, I guess, aspect of my transformation over the last decade has been to have a more theoretical, philosophical, and sort of absolute approach, because that is where reason and experience has led me to discover certain universal rules, like cooperation being superior to coercion, really simple concepts. But I used to be, much more of a pragmatist, or at least I thought, and I really don't even like using that word for what I'm describing, because it's not that I was pragmatic, because what I was doing was very unpragmatic, but it was very much looking at, immediate, short-term, narrow view kind of goals and objectives and pluses and minuses in terms of what my experience was in going to war and being a part of the military. But I just because I wanted to have my life on the line for something I believed in, and I didn't. I put that, and you could say that's pragmatic, but it turns out to be extremely impractical to think that you're going to put your life on the line for something you believe in when you're not really sure what you believe in, or you're more concerned about living with that bravado, or those I guess what someone would use the word pragmatic to excuse, when really it is such the impractical element of statism, because it is often that form of pragmatism that is used as an excuse for very impractical policies based on coercion, and that we know from sort of universal philosophical laws of persuasion being superior to coercion, better for human happiness, very impractical policies.
Right.
So, I joined when I realized from those practical, what I would have called practical considerations, like the war wasn't worth it. Hey, it didn't pay for itself with oil, imagine that. Like, hey, we're making enemies faster than we can kill them, and that's what I'm seeing firsthand. And coming home from that and going like, I got to do something positive with my experience, and if people can learn from telling from hearing my story, and I feel like I have a responsibility to share it.
Can you
And
just
really,
repeat, can you just repeat what you just said? Because I mean, I just want to make sure that it came over clear. I had a little bit of trouble understanding, just like the last thing that you just said about like the way that you wanted to live your life, after the war.
well, it was that I wanted people to learn from my mistakes. You know, smart people learn. Really smart people learn from other people's mistakes. Smart people learn from their mistakes. Dumb people never learn. Something like that.
Why
Well,
was the war a mistake?
I would hope at this point that's obvious. I mean, it seems like now the fact of the Iraq War being a mistake is rather indisputable. But I would make the case that war, in any case, is always a mistake. It is a failure of cooperation. It is a failure of collaboration. It is a failure of statism, in the sense that this is one of the inevitable failures that you get when you trust your security to giant protection rackets called government. And it is reducing us from the free trade ideal of all human relationships being voluntary. War is the greatest crime against liberty in and of itself. And in that sense, you can still have a righteous, one side in a righteous war that is purely defensive. But even in that situation, war represents a failure of humanity to have a harmonious society, and that's you could break that down in the cost of any war. But what would people be doing if they weren't killing each other? Would they be making scientific breakthroughs and discoveries and making life better and safer and more happy and more comfortable for each other? What is it that is possible through free commerce, through trade and peaceful interactions that war takes us back from? Counting the cost of war, even in dollars and lives, is inadequate, because it assumes that if that wasn't happening, that there would be nothing else going on with those sort of resources involved with the energies that go to war. But in order to conceive the true cost of war, you have to factor in all of the opportunity costs, and I think that's true about the way we look at government today, and sort of applying this philosophy universally. Every time you have a relationship that is distorted by the threat of force, by coercion, most influential in society, that which is institutionalized in government, you take us down from that potential of humanity, of what we would be able to achieve in terms of happiness and productivity and everything else, of getting what we want, that we are capable of when we are able to interact harmoniously.
If I, before you came on for the first part of the show, I shared a bit briefly, because in the city last night, the New York Historical Society was giving David Petraeus an award for achievement at, of course, this like upscale hotel in New York. Mm-hmm. And, this organization that I see at so many protests called World Can't Wait, was on hand, and, very outspoken and, really knowledgeable. And there were some CUNY students, because now Petraeus is, they're trying to like recycle his image or something and have him be a professor at some school and teach, I think, some sort of, like anti-terrorism techniques or something, but I mean, not a lot of people showed up. Maybe if 100 people were there, that was a lot. But anyway, the crowd that showed up was very passionate and outspoken. I mean, thank God there weren't any arrests, but of course, numerous NYPD bestowed us with, their wonderful company. But I mean, it's a little ironic that this New York Historical Society last year gave this same award to Henry Kissinger. Mm-hmm. And now they're giving it to David Petraeus as some sort of person, recognizing them as, some high achievers. Do you have any comments about that?
Well, I think you see a theme emerging there, and when you measure achievement in policy created that destroys human life and reduces human productivity on behalf of the few at the expense of the many, then they're doing a good job targeting recipients.
Right. Under the guise of protecting the U.S. from the terrorists. I mean, recently on, Thanksgiving, I was with some cousins, and my cousin's husband actually believes that terrorists want to attack America because they're jealous of our freedoms. It's kind of difficult, I mean, I try to refer people to books that I've read, or, don't listen to me. Of course, people are not going to listen to me. So I just try to refer them to, to books that I've read. I mean, to me, Smedley D. Butler is one of, I mean, that's not even, recent. I mean, that's decades ago that this guy was saying that war is a racket.
Exactly. Yeah, I love quoting Smedley Butler. It's one of those things you learn in the Marines when they teach you all of his exploits in war and of all the medals that he earned, but they fail to mention everything that he did when he got out of the Marines, which is, of course, much more significant, writing the book War is a Racket, describing himself as a high-class muscle man for big business. And when I was when I was active with Iraq Veterans Against the War, it took a lot of motivation for that. But I think if you want to talk about solutions now, what we're really lacking, as a movement, is a practical how. And we see in so many ways these kinds of growing, this kind of growing awareness that you talk about in the paradigm shift that's occurring. And a lot of libertarians talk about education and activism and as you mentioned, waking people up and and fighting statism and things like that. And part of what's unique about what I want to bring to the movement, what I think I have to offer, is based on taking the long view of human history, in which we see that we are evolving past conflict, past statism. That is the natural course of human progression. Technology is empowering connectedness. It is empowering modern government in some ways, but it is far more widespread than in all the technologies in the past. The distribution of technology and individual empowerment through information is accelerating, and what is missing now is the how, and giving people a unified, practical way of getting to this, because it's not going to come from infiltrating the Republican Party. It's not going to come from fighting an inch at a time, or fighting this law, or fighting that law. And while I'm a big fan of agorism, which is living by the values of libertarianism, living by the true freedom that you are capable of, and as you utmost practically can, living like government doesn't exist. Agorism specifically describing, I'd like to define it a little more broadly to include anyone, the practice of living in a way that strives to have more strictly agorist relationships. But agorism is that practice of having economic relationships that are, not reported. I mean, in a sense, it's just functioning on the black market, but also really not supporting the system, opting out in every way that you can, not enlisting in the military, not taking a government job. And no one, there's no, I think the only perfect agorist lifestyle, when you take it to that, that if you were to use a strict standard, you really would have to be living in some form of isolation from the rest of what is a thoroughly drenched in coercion society here that we're living in. So I don't think that, even as a beautiful practice of disempowering the state, leads us to any how better than, well, and then the system is going to collapse. And then the dollar is going to collapse. And then what? You don't have a plan for this? And I think this is where the concept of localization, and this is by no means a concept that I've come up with as an original thing. It's a just a sort of unique basis for the application of it, and seeing the practicality of it in a much broader perspective. Because a lot of people have talked about this before. Subsidiarity, of course, has been a concept ingrained in the Catholic Church for ages. So what comes when we have this paradigm shift? And I really think the answer is dismantling governments from the top down. And you don't have to pull the rug out from underneath anybody. There are people whose lives are very dependent on the state for sustenance. And while, yes, that's premised on immorality, and as you have this paradigm shift, you will get the equivalent of an individual being able to, in their lives, fulfill this idea that we often present intellectually of, if you could push a red button and eliminate all coercion in society today, would you do it? And you can immediately eliminate your participation in coercion in just the way you live your life. And yes, that's going to happen through the paradigm shift, but the practical way of actually getting to a voluntary free stateless society is not going to be by a dangerous system that as we've seen in so many other instances of change. So what we need to do is have the peaceful way of doing this, whether it's by an election or by some other form of consensus. At some point, we're going to get to a critical mass, and the how of getting out of this, of extricating ourselves from this difficult situation that we've gotten ourselves into with modern statism, is to localize it. Ultimately down to the individual.
Right. I've always looked at everything in terms of, health. I've always, most of my life, my focus has always been on health, on just, physical, emotional, some people call it spiritual. I still try not to consider myself to be a political person, because I always just think that health unites people. It creates like the common denominator for us to be unified. And I just believe that if people, to me, it's just all about, people don't use all of what they have. I mean, they don't live to their full potentials, and they're kind of living at more of a, an arrested state of development, and the people with more power, money, whatever, are just going to end up, using, what you're not using. So if you're not just, filling all of yourself and living up to your full potential and taking what's rightfully yours, someone else is going to take it and use it against you. And so, I mean, people, just call them the 99%, the little guy, whatever, just really not knowing their rights. I mean, no one really ever taught them their rights. If you grow up in a fairly humble environment, or your average kind of, I mean, I can't say middle class anymore, because, there's not much middle class left. But, I mean, most people just kind of live, and they're taught to be happy with less or small. And, I don't want to say it's like not the fault of the 1% or the elite, but no,
it's the product of the paradigm.
It's
the current paradigm. If a paradigm shift is what gets us to a voluntary society, then what is producing the institutions that we rail against is the current paradigm.
Because if people, all this idea of authority. I mean, if people are adults, you're supposed to be your own authority. I mean, that the whole point of life is to grow and to maturity, mature levels, to be responsible. You don't need authority if you're an adult. I mean, the society that we live in, that is, like I think I was a psych major, and I studied all about dysfunctional relationships, and we live in just an extremely dysfunctional society where people just never grow up, and it's like living at home when you're like 30, 40, 50 years old, and like it's like that's the way society wants to keep people, unable to kind of fly out of the nest, so to speak, unable to to be, it's like a parent that doesn't want their child to ever grow up and leave, because the parent doesn't want to be left because then that parent is going to be like, oh, like I won't have a job anymore. What will I do? So I kind of, I look at the powers that be, the Fed, the government, kind of the same way. Like they don't want to let people fly out of the nest because then they're just going to be like, oh my God, like, I won't have anybody to, to be codependent with. I won't have anybody to, suck the life out of anymore. Like, what will I do? And it literally like freaks them out, like some kind of a parent that just doesn't want to let their kid go.
I think that's a really great analogy for capturing one aspect of it, and at its core, you really hit on something much more important, which is the codependence of it. And this is one of the things that I really changed my perspective when I was in jail, in terms of being face to face with the state every day, and in the form of the guards, and just having your life completely dominated by that. And it's really tempting in that situation to be hateful and to be angry at the guards, and even as someone who's supposedly awakened, to have some resentment or animosity to those who are actually keeping you in a cage. And what I realize is that a truly happy person who is truly free and is the master of their own demeanor and has that kind of, is not a slave to any cycles of negative emotions or anything like that. Someone who is psychologically healthy doesn't do that. They don't feel that hate. They don't worry about the insignificant factors of producing superficial happiness, but they look at the oppressor as someone to pity, as similarly a victim, and the attitude isn't, how do I defeat this person? How do I attack this person? How do I make them think that they're wrong? It's, how do I share my joy? How dare I allow them to continue to suffer as an oppressor, as a violent person? And I think that represents, in and of itself, a significant change for the liberty movement as a whole. So one of the things that I really want to do with what I'm doing now, with the book I'm writing right now, with my production when I'm able to get back to a daily production in a couple of months here, is to bring that perspective to the movement, and that our attitude towards the rest of society or to government is not one of hate or resentment or anger, but of, hey, how can we help you by sharing this knowledge and this understanding and this philosophy? And not that this is not in any kind of confrontational, and I'm all for direct confrontation, on issues and of individuals that are really vicious examples of statism. But in terms of our attitude and our message to society in general, not one of resentment or moral condescension even, but of like, hey, we can help, and to show that people can improve their lives by adopting this perspective. And I think if we can't do that, we're not being true to our own philosophy. If being a libertarian makes you miserable and angry and confrontational, and that's what it does, why would anybody want to join that for the self-satisfaction of being right all the time? Like, really, is that what you want to do? You want to be right and miserable? I don't. I think you're being very wrong about how humans were intended to live. So I hope that the movement going forward, and I'm confident that in a way it will, with or without me, one way or another, will come to this, because it's kind of coming to, I want to say a critical mass, but maybe that's not it, but a certain critical point in its growth and its relationship with the rest of society. As everyday Americans.
Oh, hello?
Are going well?
I hope we're not losing you.
He's fading out a bit, hon.
Adam, are you there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, because it sounded like we were losing you a little bit. So, do you have to leave at 7 on the dot, or I just want to make sure we're utilizing? You do. I just wanted to ask you, right? So, how do you envision yourself and you're challenging the status quo. And I wanted to ask you about, because I was listening to a couple of the videos and interviews that you had done since you've been released, and someone was asking you, it might have been Derek Bros, about meditation, that you were meditating in jail.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm a huge advocate of I try to talk about yoga and meditation all the time, because I literally believe that practicing meditation can just save the world, and just learning to be grounded and centered in the present moment is the only way to live, pretty much.
I would certainly endorse, on behalf of liberty as a cause, any motivation or any power that people can take on to encourage others to meditate more and to do more yoga. And yoga is a distinct form of meditation. My girlfriend here, Gary, has done an incredible job getting me back into it. I was never really into it except just very, very briefly. And I think it's a great form of meditation. I'm still exploring how to get from that particular form of the practice, what is most valuable to me. She goes to classes, like an hour and a half long classes, which is totally normal. And it's a very unique experience to go and be with a room full of people, and having an instructor getting that. I think for myself, I'd want something perhaps a little more solitary and meditative in and of itself, but there's something about the physical practice of yoga that if only for a health sense and a certain self-awareness sense, is very centering and very appropriate. But when I was in jail, I did meditate a lot, especially when I was in solitary earlier on and was cut off from communication. And I can't wait to get all of these legal issues behind me and get back to full production as soon as possible. But I want to build it into my routine in a way that is another tool for me to maintain centeredness. And I think it's an incredible set of skills that you gain from meditation. And if I was a .05 when I got into jail, I took my skill level up to maybe 2.5, and that's still a life-changing experience, and I recognize that there's way more to be gained from it. But I definitely think that's when you talk about like the psychological roots of statism, of people being insecure and people being frightened and people feeling like their only way to cope with this world is to endorse statism or to go along with the status quo or to turn a blind eye to violence and to live with that cognitive dissonance and that discomfort. It's like, no, you don't have to live that way. And meditation is one way of elevating people. I have this fantasy, and as we develop technology and people have robots in their homes and computers that are smarter than them and stuff like that, that at some point we're all going to get therapy robots, and there's nobody who's going to have insecurity issues or emotional issues of any kind. And in a sense, I see that's already happening through the internet and the connectedness that it makes possible. And I think while the mental health establishment in the United States has lots of problems, generally speaking, worldwide, the development of an awareness of mental health issues and mental health in general is a new phase of the human experience that's really going to move us forward.
Well, that's what I mean. I feel like what enables, I'm just going to call them the powers that be, to control the masses is by keeping people disconnected from themselves. And meditation is one of the great ways of just reconnecting with yourself. And the reason why I advocate yoga practice so much is because it is about reconnecting with nature. It's because you cannot force these poses. I mean, good luck trying. I mean, of course you can try it and just end up hurting yourself, but it's really about just teaching you how to live, with nature and how to do things nature's way. slowly. It's kind of like farming. It's like you're cultivating your body and you're integrating yourself. Most people don't realize how much emotionally we're cut off from ourselves early on. It's, our natural healthy emotions are, either shamed or, you're made to feel bad, for being maybe afraid if you're a guy, or a lot of people are not allowed to have their anger. And yoga is all about tapping into all of the emotions that people are conditioned to cut off, which is how the system keeps control of us, and to take them back and integrate. And and not to be like having your anger and being overwhelmed by it to the point where you're out of control, but when you learn to just feel your natural feelings and breathe while you're feeling your feelings, it's like anything else. It's like learning how to drive a car or ride a horse. You learn to master your emotions, right? As long as we're keeping them at bay and we're afraid to feel our legitimate feelings, they're always gonna like have control over us. It's only by, kind of moving into them and breathing into them, then you gain mastery over it. And that's like clearly what the powers that be don't want people to do, because, then they wouldn't be able to completely pull the wool over people's eyes. If people knew how powerful they were, forget it. I mean, what kind of society would we be living in if people knew how powerful and how amazing? I mean, some people get to find out how amazing, incredible they are, but I mean, like take celebrities. Even after a point, though, just like the produce in your refrigerator is going to go bad if you don't use it and cook it right away. Nobody can stay on top forever. And even celebrities they try to stay on top forever and never give like the little guy a chance to have their time at the top. To me is like, that potato that's been in your refrigerator for like a few months that's sprouting all kinds of like weird looking things. It's like, okay, time to throw you in the compost. But I don't know. We have 3 more. Well, actually, it just turned to 6:58. What are your plans? How do you see your movement going?
Well, being in jail was really tough for my operation, which basically fell apart. A lot of money was stolen. A lot of personal property was stolen. People misrepresented what I was saying publicly, and I'm pretty much starting from scratch here. So put my life back together one piece at a time, getting past all these legal issues. I look forward to getting back to full regular production as soon as I possibly can. But right now I'm working on this book, getting my website redone, and a lot of other things that are necessary in order to get that going. If you want to support me in this, I really appreciate anybody who's willing to donate or get a T-shirt at adamversustheman.com/invest. And there's a lot of stuff I'm working on, but when I come back, I'm going to be coming back strong, and I think I'll have a really important book as part of my platform at that point that really captures what this philosophy is all about. So I also want to say I'm just really grateful to everybody who supported me while I was in jail. I got a lot of letters. We got a lot of donations for the Legal Defense Fund, and it was really encouraging to know that I was there while I was locked up.
I appreciate your being on here, and I hope that you can be on again. And I look forward to seeing you at whatever the next Liberty Forum event will be. I know they're having something in Long Island. I don't know if you're going to be going to that, but keep it up. I mean, it's not easy. This is real serious times that we're living in, and I mean, I think it's exciting. It's definitely a time for people to find themselves and find what they're made out of, and don't fear. Don't fear finding out that you're powerful, or feel the fear and do it anyway, maybe. So We'll talk to you soon, okay, Adam?
All right. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Stay strong. Peace.
You're listening to Awake Radio. Straight talk for the awake and aware.
Welcome back after that short break, and I am really happy to be introducing another person that spent much longer time in jail quite a while ago. One of the stories that really hit me hard, because I was always a very avid jogger. And when I heard this story, I never in a million years would ever imagine that, the powers that be would, kind of cover up or, try to, just to arrest somebody, put people in jail. I mean, of course, I completely believe them when they portrayed this group of, young, people, they called it wilding. And then to find out that it was all, not true. The real guy came out and admitted it. And meanwhile, I never heard a word about that. So we have one of the Central Park Five, Raymond Santana, on the line. Thank you for being with us, Raymond.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
I want, when I watched the Central Park Five, you were one of the guys. I wanted to hug you when you were sharing about how you felt, like everybody was able to move on, and they have their families and their kids and their houses and things like that. And you felt like, you were like behind.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to hug you at that point in the movie, but I also wanted to tell you that you're not, I don't think you're the only one that feels that way. I felt that way for like a long time myself. But, so, okay, just tell us your story. Like how did you feel when all that was going on? I mean, back in 1989.
Well, what happens is that as a 14-year-old kid, it's very difficult. A lot of stuff goes over your head, especially like dealing with the justice system, dealing with the police officers. We get a lot of questions as to how can you confess to something that you didn't do. And we always tell people that first you have to understand the dynamics of a confession, of giving a false statement. Being put in a room and it's cold in there and not giving anything to drink, not giving anything to eat, and you're sitting there for over, 8-10 hours and you're afraid.
Right.
And so, not knowing what Miranda is, not knowing that you need to lawyer up, to feel like you didn't do anything wrong, so you have nothing to hide. To get caught with the good cop, bad cop scenario that you see in Law and Order and CSI, and so it's very scary, not to understand what's really going on. And this is something also that you have to take into consideration, that we were 14, 15, 16-year-old kids who never been in trouble with the law, going against seasoned veteran detectives. This was the North Homicide Detective Squad. This was the elite of the police force, and they were investigating a rape, not a homicide. And so when you look at that dynamic, the scale is already shifted. The cards is already stacked against you. And so it becomes very difficult to digest that, and then it goes on to the media where they start to put these outrageous headlines, because at this point they were battling each other to sell the most papers. So the outrageous headlines is what they went off as far as sales are concerned. And so they were going back and forth, and this is where you get wilding, this is where you get urban terrorists, this is where you get wolf pack. And so, to deal with all that at 14 was very overwhelming, and then you go and you look at your family for help, and they all thought you was guilty. And so when they think you're guilty and they all shun away from you, you feel like you become all alone in the situation. It was the
Your
five
family,
of us
your
against the
family.
system.
I'm sorry, Raymond. Your family thought you were guilty.
Yes, I came from a big family. I had a lot of uncles on my mother's side and a lot of uncles on my father's side who thought I was actually guilty. At the end of the day, the only person who always came to court for me was my dad and my sister. And that's how it went for a long time.
Holy wow. Well, that's not a good feeling. I mean, right, when you feel completely like without the support and the resources, I mean, that's really scary.
Yeah.
And so, like, how did they end up picking you guys? I mean, because you weren't really in that side of the park, if I remember from the documentary.
No, what happened was that I got picked up outside the park, walking with a group of kids that was headed back uptown. And so me and Steven Lopez got picked up at the same time. Kevin Richardson got picked up later on, and Corey and Antron McCrae got picked up the next day, and Corey and Yusuf got picked up like 2 days later.
Right.
And that became the five of us. But we were the most vulnerable. We were the ones that never had any runs with the law, so it was easy for us to get caught up in the system.
Well, I can't help but, like, as I'm listening to you speak, what happened to you guys? I'm sorry, how many of the Central Park Five, of course, so there were five of you.
There's five of us.
So that was like a mini version of what is now happening globally, because that's what the system does to everyone.
That's right.
It takes advantage of your ignorance. It's going to use your ignorance against you. It's not going to help you. It's not going to give you any leverage. It's not going to help you to get ahead. It's going to do the opposite. So if you think you're going to go to school, you're spending all this money to go to school. Okay, you think you're going to get a degree or whatever. Meanwhile, like, you're getting into debt. I mean, so it's like whatever leverage you're born into this world with, guess what? That's all the leverage that you're going to have, because the system is not going to help you. I mean, of course, it's natural. Like, that's why we're here. I mean, we want to get ahead. We want to gain more leverage and more footing in life. And the system is doing exactly the opposite. It's doing everything it can to undermine, that attempt to strengthen yourself, and it's going to use your innocence, your naivety, your ignorance against you. That's what it's doing to like everybody.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Continue.
No, it's fine. Those who aren't aware, that's what happens. You get caught up in a situation like us, and at the end of the day, it costs. Over for a juvenile, it costs over $200,000 to house you in the facility. The federal government will pay the state, to keep you there and to take care of you and to watch over you and to keep you locked up. And that's where a lot of revenue comes in for the city, and so that's why the prison industry has become such a big booming business, because the more people you lock up, the more money you receive from the federal government.
That's insane. I mean, I know it's insane, like, system. Not to mention the quota system, like that the cops have to Adil Palenko, that one officer that came out about the quota system, and the captains are telling them to be like picking up like these young kids that aren't doing anything wrong, because they gotta make so many quotas. I mean, what kind of a psycho system? That's psychotic.
Yeah. Well, what happens is they start to be run on budgets. So at the end of the day, the police department right now in New York City has a budget of about $4.3 billion. And in order to for that budget to grow, you have to show numbers. You have to show that crime rate is down. You have to show that arrests are up, that you're locking people up, you're putting them away. And that's the only way your budget grows. And that's what happens. It becomes all part of the money system,
But
you
I
know.
don't.
Whereas,
I mean, aren't cops supposed to be like reducing crime? I mean, like that doesn't make any sense to me. It's like a good cop, a sign of a good cop is not to be making a lot of arrests because that
Mhm.
shows that that NYPD sucks if there's that many criminals. I mean,
exactly.
it's so I don't know if you've seen the documentary Dirty Wars, but that's exactly the same depiction that they were making about war. That war creates terrorism. It doesn't stop it because for every you know group of people that they drop drones on or do night raids on, and you're killing family members, you're creating more terrorists because those people want to attack us because we blew up their family.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's called
But
normal. That's not a
but
terrorist.
but, but they don't think about that. To them it doesn't matter. It's about what happens is that here what they do in the United States is that they implant fear in the people. The same thing with stop and frisk in New York City. What happens is that it became a tool to make people afraid, to control them, so that the police department can do whatever they want. When you deal with a budget that big, even Bloomberg said it, came out and said, I have access to a small army.
Right.
You
Can you
know, I mean,
imagine?
it's the arrogance. It's the arrogance when the NYPD can go into New Jersey to investigate people who are involved in Islam and don't even, go out of the jurisdiction and don't even inform the police in that area that they're doing an investigation. I mean, it's just plain arrogance at the end of the day that they feel that they can do what they want. And they do that, and the reason why they get away with it is because first they implant fear into the people. Once you start to implant fear into the people, people want a reaction. They want results. And so this is when they start doing whatever they want. That's the same thing with us in our case. They put all these outrageous headlines in the media where people started calling out for blood. People wanted action. And so when they say, here, we have 5 boys, nobody questioned it because everybody was just like, hey, they're guilty, send them to jail forever. And this is how they got away with it for so long.
And so, because that's what surprised me because, of course, you hear about it, and they're ripping you guys apart when they thought they had the guilty ones, but then when it became crystal clear that it wasn't you, it wasn't any of you, it was that one guy. And they didn't even find the real guy that did it. The real guy had, like this is like so ironic to me, is that it's actually the one guy that did commit that crime, that rape and that, bludgeoning that woman, who actually admitted it. So a rapist actually has like more integrity than like NYPD because he came out, and I think was it Corey? I'm sorry, or was it you that knew that guy in jail?
Well, Corey bumped into him in a correctional facility. He saw Corey. He had a conversation with him, and from that conversation, he felt so bad that Corey was still locked up 13 and a half years later for a crime that he didn't commit. That he felt that he had to come forward and clear Corey's name. He had to come forward and tell the truth.
So imagine that a rapist has a conscience that even like NYPD doesn't have.
I mean, even to this day, the NYPD still says that we're still guilty. The NYPD has they issued a report going against the district attorney of New York, who issued a report saying that we were innocent. And so the NYPD countered that by issuing what's called the Armstrong report. And in this report, they bring up 3 theories as to how we're guilty. So they don't even know exactly which theory is right. So they put 3 theories to say, well, if it's not this one, it has to be this one. And so the theories is to say that either Reyes went first or we went first. But we were all involved. And that's something they still hold on to this day because they don't want to admit that they fumbled the ball.
Exactly. I mean, so if people are willing to go to this extent, to just keep hiding and covering up instead of admitting, that they screwed up because, right, I know a lot of careers were built on your case. I'm trying to
That's right.
remember the name of the woman, the district attorney.
Linda Fairstein. Linda Fairstein went on to become a novelist. She writes fiction. Elizabeth Lederer went on to teach at Columbia University, where on the website she cited our case as a badge of honor. Detective Arroyo is in Florida, living well on a pension. Mike Sheen, who you've seen in several movies, he's also a reporter for a news station in New York City. These guys went on to build careers. They went on to retire with their pensions intact, even though a lot of them got into trouble. Detective Arroyo was caught in a sting in Washington Heights in Harlem where they found a dead guy, and in the trunk of the car was about $30-some thousand, and he split it. And he got turned in by the rookie cop who they made take the money. And so when there was an investigation done, the panel who oversaw the investigation didn't believe the rookie cop. They discredited him, and they let Arroyo retire with his full benefits and his pension.
Again, like as I'm listening to you, I was last night. I took my camera, took some pictures and videos outside of this upscale hotel where they were awarding David Petraeus. The New York Historical Society was giving him an award, and meanwhile, it's common knowledge by many people that this guy is just like a blatant war criminal, and so it really is. I don't want to say funny, but the fact that they just keep trying to shove it in the public's face that these people are to be honored, that they are deserving of, awards of achievement, so the Feinstein and the Lederer lady who helped to put you guys behind bars, and the same thing with Petraeus. He got discharged supposedly for adultery. He gets discharged for adultery in the military. Committing adultery, I guess, is more severe than just killing and torturing thousands of innocent people. And then they send him to be a professor, teacher at some school, CUNY, and the students have been protesting his presence at the school. It's just like they go to such lengths, and just blatant. Like they're like psychotic, really, trying to pass these people off as some kind of credible, admirable people. When meanwhile, all along, their careers are just built on just freaking lies and total bullshit.
That's right. That's right.
It's talk about feeding you GMO. It's like, GMO food. So you stayed in jail for how long?
Almost 7 years.
7. And when they found you guilty, you must have just been like, oh my God. It must have been horrible.
What happens is that, for me, I question a lot, how is it you can find me guilty when there's no physical evidence to connect me to any of us connect any of us to the crime. And this was a situation where they took our handprints, they took our footprints, they took all of our clothes, they took blood, they took hair samples, and they substituted 2 types of DNA testing, and none of it matched anything. And so that was the first one, and then you look at our statements, there's 5 different stories, none of them are the same. Corey even went on to do, additional truth statements. So he had 3 statements of 3 different stories. And so when you look at that, you're like, how can you get a conviction based on that? You know, nobody really stopped. You know, one juror in the film who you see was Ron Goldman, who's Ron Gold, sorry, and he was the only person who questioned the statement. And when I spoke to him, because I met him and we had a conversation, and he told me, he said, you know, Ray, the reason it was so hard for me to convict you guys was because it was three of us on trial, me, Antron, and Yusuf. There were three different stories. So whose story do I believe?
Oh wait, so I'm sorry. You said this lawyer, Mr. Gold, said that he had a hard.
No, he was a juror. No, he was a juror at our trial.
Okay.
Ron Gold was a juror at our trial, who you see in the film. He's in the film also. Okay. And when me and him had this conversation, you know, he told me, he said, Ray, it was so hard for me to convict you guys because the three of you guys are on trial. There was three different stories. So whose stories do I believe after being the truth? You know, if I went with you, then Antron and Yusuf must be innocent.
I mean, like
that was the dilemma.
The jury wasn't able to tell that even your confessions were a bit like manufactured.
Only one juror raised that suspicion. You know, when you read our statements start off at approximately 1,700 hours. You know, there's word in it that says southbound, northbound. You know, we went westbound, we went southbound to the reservoir. Those are not words of a 14-year-old kid.
Right.
And nobody questioned that.
And one thing that I really, you know, ever since I watched the Central 5 documentary, and I watched it a couple of times, was what I can't believe is how these, you know, right, like elite officers, like you described, you know, veteran officers were allowed to, you know, question and interrogate young kids really without any lawyer present, without anyone there, and then find your, you know, supposed confessions you know, valid and you know, credible, when, I mean, obviously if you guys are being left alone and you're, you know, 14, 15 years old, it's obvious you're being railroaded. I can't believe that was admissible. Like, I can't believe that those confessions were admissible when you were being interrogated alone.
You see, what happens is that, you know, police have, you know, this isn't anything new. These are methods that they've been using for years, and so they know how to get around a parent being in the room. They know, you know, they know how to read your rights because they understand that you're under a lot of pressure. They know that already. So when they read your rights, it goes over your head. You don't understand what's going on. All you want to do is get out of there. And so, you know, this is stuff that they use for, you know, forever. This isn't anything new. As you can see, this happens all across the country. You know, and so, you know, what you see at the end is the finished product, which is the video confession, or which is the videotape statement, sorry. And what you see is that finished product. And when you present that to people, you know, in the media or on the jury, it becomes very hard for them to see anything else. It becomes very hard for them to question anything else. And police know that. The DA knows that. And so this death is always stacked against you.
I mean, what it sounds like you're describing is, you know, I mean, like it's very corporate. Like, it just sounds very corporate and manufactured. Like, you know, and right, because they're so used to it. I mean, even if you get a speeding ticket, for Christ's sake, you know, like if you got to go in and maybe stand in front of a judge, like, and say that you weren't, you know, speeding, or you're trying to defend yourself, you know, you're dealing with and going up against people that do this stuff every single day. I mean, you got to be kidding me, you know? Like, how is your average person, you know, so it really is like you're just being completely freaking railroaded. I mean, the image of, you know, and I hate to say this image because it's a really horrible image, but, you know, putting like live cows into these machines, like to just turn them into, beef is like the image that's coming to my mind. Like that's exactly what this system is. It's a meat grinder. It's a freaking meat grinder. I mean, and this whole idea about prisons, like they get this money like by arresting people and throwing like innocent people into jail. I mean, how do these people fucking sleep at night? I mean, oh my God. But anyway, Ray, we're going to take a break. And, it might be a couple of minutes break, and we'll be back.
You see what sending out them negative waves did, Moriarty?
But Oddball, I did try and tell them, but they won't listen. I tried.
Sure.
But I did try.
Oh, man. Don't hit me with them negative waves so early in the morning.
But I can't force them to listen. I can't.
Always with the negative waves, Moriarty. Always with the negative waves. Have a little faith, baby. Have a little faith.
But I keep trying. Oddball, I keep trying. But they won't listen. They won't tune in. They really won't.
Why don't you knock it off with them negative waves? Why don't you dig how beautiful it is out here? Why don't you say something righteous and hopeful for a change?
Tune in to Awake Radio for your positive waves.
Okay, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sticking with us. And we still have Raymond Santana, one of the Central Park Five. And for those who have not seen it, the Central Park Five documentary by Ken Burns, and I think his daughter also helped. They did an amazing job. He's another person I would love to maybe have on this show if I could, I don't know, get in touch with him somehow. But for right now, Ray, how do people find the documentary, and where can they find information about the Central Park Five story?
We're all over. Me and Yusuf and Kevin and Corey is all on social media. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. There's also a Central Park 5 page, which is central-park-5.com. The film right now is on Netflix, so you can go on Netflix and you can look at it there. And if you want to purchase it, it's on Amazon. There's also a website of Central Park 5 on PBS because they aired the film in April. And so that's basically, basically Netflix right now is the best bet to really go on there and watch it.
I have Netflix. I have seen it already, but I'll watch it again. Okay, so during the break, we were talking about the confession. So, right, explain how these, I'm just going to call them bully cops, railroaded you. Like, what did they say?
Well, first off, it starts off calm. Raymond just, what happened that night and tell us what happened. And, so you go through the story, you tell them what you saw, what you didn't see, and they ask you questions. And I think for us, what happened was that basically because Lederer and Fairstein were also acting as lead investigators, so they were going out and they were gathering this information and they were bringing it back to the police officers, which was totally false. It was wrong. And so these is what they perceive to be the facts. And so what happens is that it starts out very harmless. They just ask you questions. That's what happens. And it proceeds over a number of hours. Now, you have to remember that we've already been sitting in these rooms for over 8 hours with no drink, no water, we're tired, we want to go home. And now you have to endure these detectives. And so it starts off kind of nice, and they're asking you what happened. Right? And then as it goes on, the tone changes. And so for me, my grandmother was there, and my grandmother spoke very little English. She cannot carry a conversation. So what he had to do as Detective Arroyo, he had to translate to my grandmother. And so what happened is that there's a knock at the door. An officer comes in. He speaks Spanish. So he calls my grandmother, and he calls her out into the hallway. And so what happens is that when he calls in the hallway, he's in the hallway talking to her saying, look, we think that your grandson is withholding information. We want to find out, what's going on. As he's in the hallway with her is when they start to work on me inside. And so they're bringing these other detectives who stand and they stare at you and they lunge at you. They get in your ear very close and start yelling at you. And this happens over several hours. This isn't like, it happens once, it happens twice. And so, there's a knock at the door. They stop, they disappear. My grandmother comes back in the room. They act like nothing happened. All she sees is that her grandson is shook up, and she don't know what's going on. And when she questions the detective, he says nothing. He's just trying to find out what happened. And so then it says, Raymond, start from the top. What happened again? So where were you? Who were you with? And that goes on for hours. Now, it comes to a point where they know. See, these guys know it's all about pressure. And they're applying the pressure. Each time my grandmother steps out the room, it gets a little more intense. The last time for me was that Detective Arroyo. He got upset, and he banged on the table, and he lunged at me. And right then and there, I'm scared. I'm thinking, I'm not going to make it out this precinct. This is it. I'm going to die right here. And so a detective by the name of Hardigan comes out and stops him. He stops him. He yells at him. He pushes him out, tells him, get out the room. Right then and there, I felt like he saved my life.
Oh, wow.
Right? This is the ultimate, this is the peak. This is when they know they got you. And right then and there, he pulls up a chair, and he comes with the good cop scenario. Raymond, I know you're a good kid. You didn't do this. But these guys on the precinct, and they say you did it. I don't want you to go to jail. I need your help. And he pulls out the photo of Kevin Richardson. He says, do you know this guy? And I say, no. He says, well, I know he's going to jail. He did it. I don't want you to go to jail. I need you to help me with this guy.
Yeah. So he started, so he was pretending to be like this good cop, and then he started telling to you that your other friends, or actually they weren't really your friends at the time, right?
I didn't know them. Yeah, I didn't know them. And so what happens is that he starts to put in what he think are the facts. So he goes, well, what did Kevin do? And I make up a lie and say, well, Kevin was struggling with the woman. Because the scratch under his eye didn't come from the jogger. It came from the police officers when they tackled him. And so he knows that. But he uses that and he lies and says it came from the jogger. Just like they get to a point in the statement when he says, well, Raymond, this woman was found in a bloody ravine. She lost a lot of blood. Something had to be used, to inflict the injuries around her eyes and her head. And he gives me the options. There had to be something, a rock, a brick, a pipe. So right here, he's giving me the option to choose. And I choose a brick, which later on, a brick is shown in the courtroom as the weapon. But it has no blood on it.
So that was my next question. I mean, none of you guys had any blood on you, right?
Nothing.
So that doesn't make any sense, because I mean, that woman was beaten up considerably, and if even one of you guys was the one that did it, they would have found even a drop of blood on your shoe. Some article of clothing. I mean, none of your fingerprints were on. I mean, I don't know how you get fingerprints off of a brick, but I think it was like a lead pipe or something.
Nothing was on anything. Even the brick was produced in court as the weapon that was used to bash Miss Nelly's skull in. And that has no blood on it. It has no prints on it. It doesn't have anything on it. Kevin Richardson in trial, they said that Kevin Richardson had a hair fiber on him. And that hair fiber was similar to the jogger, but it was not the jogger's. And so when they retested these hair samples, because we all had hair samples, we all had hair fibers on our clothes. They retested. None of them came from none of the victims. Now, when they looked into that, what happened was that they took our clothing and they laid them down on the precinct floor. And so really it got contaminated. So what we had was officers' hairs on our clothes.
Right. Well, let me ask you, I feel like I just lost my train of thought a little bit. I had something in my mind to ask, and So okay, now I remember what it was. So do you believe that these cops knew that you were not, had no way were related to this crime, and just were going to do whatever they could do to make the shoe fit, or that they were, I mean, at some point they really like thought that you guys did it, and they're, I mean, at some point they had to know that you guys were not in any way, because all the evidence shows that you were not related to this crime at all, if there's like no evidence. So I just,
That's right.
I mean, it really is kind of, but that's what makes it so bizarre, is that it really is true that they just were, blatantly railroading you to make whatever police quota they got to make, and to keep the jails filled. I mean, is that
this was a big case. Within the first 2 weeks of this case, there were 400 articles written on us, dissecting our lives as juveniles. And so, and there was also stuff that the police was feeding the media to write these outrageous headlines. And so, when the DNA evidence comes back and it doesn't match, right then and there, they should have entertained an alternative theory. You knew that Mateus Reyes was running around. He was known as the East Side rapist. He was known as the East Side slasher. He raped a woman in Central Park 2 days before our case, on April 17th. And this is the person that they was looking for. And the reason why he got caught, he got apprehended because he raped a woman on East 91st Street, and she was able to get away and tell the doorman, and this is who apprehended him, the doorman and some construction workers in the building, maintenance workers. So the police didn't even catch him.
Right. I mean, you got to really kind of wonder then, what the heck are the cops doing? Like, I mean, because it's obviously not their job to find like the real criminal, and they don't seem to be really that interested in finding the truth. And like, they don't seem very interested in finding the truth at all.
At the end of the day, it's all about the numbers. When you look at stop and frisk in New York City, there have been over 5 million stop and frisk, right? Which resulted in less than 1% arrest. So what does that tell you? It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's a tool to inflict fear into the people. We're going to do whatever we want, how we want. If we want to stop you for any reason, we're going to do that. And that's what it's about. It's about fear at the end of the day. It's about these guys exercising their dominance, their arrogance, because they feel they're the best entity in the world.
Unreal. Oh boy. I mean, talk about scary. So recently, I know it was in November that I'm not sure if that was the most recent court case. I think it was like November the 12th. The last kind of hearing on the case, or
yes.
So like, what is happening in the courtroom? Like, what is the hearing about?
Well, what happens is that we have been in depositions with the city for months now. We have conducted over 70 depositions, and what happens is that it becomes used as a stall tactic. These people come into these depositions, and we're talking about, the district attorneys and who worked on this case, the detectives, and they cannot answer these questions, And so will we ever get to trial? I don't know. I think that at the end of the day, they don't want us to go to trial because a lot of stuff will be uncovered. Today was Commissioner Kelly's deposition. And in this deposition, we even uncovered how Robin Morgenthau was doing the reinvestigation, and Kelly didn't agree with what Robin Morgenthau was his findings. Kelly didn't agree that Robin Morgenthau was saying, "Hey, at the end of the day, these guys are innocent." And so, since Kelly didn't agree with him, he went on and put together a panel and did their own reinvestigation and issued a report saying that we were still guilty. So he undermined the district attorney of New York, who has been in office for over 30 years at that time, and said, I don't agree with you and I don't believe you, so I'm going to do what I want and I'm going to issue my own investigation.
Can you
This is the arrogance that we deal with.
Say the name, the guy's name again, Robinthal?
Robin Morgenthau, he recently, he's not the district attorney of New York City anymore, but he was. And he was in office for over 30 years. And he issued a report saying that we were innocent and that these charges need to be vacated. And Commissioner Kelly at the time, didn't agree with that. So he went on and conducted his own investigation and put together a panel of prestigious lawyers and told them to find, some guilt. And so the officers who they put to help out with the reinvestigation was part of the same homicide detective squad from 1989.
Oh, no.
So this is like a fraternity. This became a fraternity. So the older guys who are all retired are the ones who put us away, and the younger guys who are coming in are the ones doing the reinvestigation for the city. If it's not a setup, I don't know what it is.
I mean, it's like they're railroading you again. It sounds like they're
exactly.
Holy
they're trying. And so what they do is they use these stall tactics against us where they just want to prolong the proceedings. You know what I'm saying? They send you this stack of waivers and they want you to fill them out and they want to dig into your history because at the end of the day, it's all about when Raymond Santana gets on the stand, will this jury believe him? And so they want to dig into my history and say that I was the problem child before all this happened. If anything, they probably saved me by sending me to prison. That's what they're saying.
Oh my God. These people are just nothing short of completely psychotic. I mean, there is no other word to fit they're mentally disturbed. I mean, there's just no question about it. We have complete psychotic people in charge of the system. I mean, it is just, oh my God. I mean, and it's so, obvious that, I mean, you guys are innocent. The real guy admitted it. So, I mean, and it sounds like what you're describing to me is another tactic of wearing you down, just like they did, by interrogating you for all those hours, back
That's exactly what it is.
Right, so they're doing it again. They're just doing it again.
That's exactly what it is.
So, I mean, so all these depositions and stuff are to get the five of you some sort of money or reward for what happened to you, or to have them publicly come out and say that they screwed up and they wrongly convicted you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. At the end of the day, we're suing in the federal courts, and so at the end of the day, you're not going to get an apology from them because they're sticking to their story and they're going to go down with the boat. So the next best thing is some type of monetary damage because that's the only thing they respect at the end of the day. When you take money out of their pocket, and it's not even their pocket because this is the taxpayers. The taxpayers, those lawsuits, the money they've received comes from the taxpayers' dollars. At the end of the day, they have developed a defense against us that has cost them $6 million already.
Yeah.
So they have spent $6 million of the taxpayers' money to put together a defense against us that won't even hold up.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I mean, oh my God. It is just like psychosis on top of psychosis. And so, what was it like when you got out? I mean, I remember in the document you were saying that even though you were out of jail, you're still not free because it's hard to get a job, once you have a criminal record. And how is that? Has that gotten easier? Like now that more people know your story, and you got more.
Yeah. what happened is that in the beginning it was very difficult because you still had this bullseye on your back, and when people find out who you are, you wasn't sure how they was going to receive you, whether they're going to look at you as you was innocent or they're going to look at you as being guilty, because our exoneration, our vindication was on page 12 and not on the front page. A lot of people didn't want to cover it. There was a lot of backlash saying that we were still guilty, so it was very difficult. People still juggled with it. But since the film has come out, it has been very therapeutic for us. It has given us a platform. It gave people a chance to see this movie, to see this visual, and to connect with us as human beings, not as rapists, as animals, as urban terrorists. And so that has been rewarding. We have been able now, to go across the country and speak to numerous kids, numerous colleges, high schools, and just tell them the message. Let them know of what happened to us and how we don't want this to keep occurring. So it has given us a great platform. It has been very therapeutic. Every time I go out and I speak to people, it lets me vent.
Yeah.
It gives me a chance to heal a little bit more. And the public has received us. The reception that we have received from the public has been tremendous. People have apologized. People cry. They want to come and hug us. They write letters. They protest. They put together petitions. And so, that every day, the numbers are adding up to those who support us. We have been in front of the city council. We have received proclamations from the city council. We have received proclamations from the state senate. Several politicians have spoke out and said that this case needs to be settled. It needs to be done with. And that's from the top to the bottom. The only people who haven't spoken out, who haven't, been on our side is Bloomberg and Kelly.
Yeah, gee. Not a surprise there. I mean, really.
Mm-hmm.
Like Bloomberg with his freaking army. I mean, how, the fact that he just has the nerve to just say that like out in the open, and again, like and nobody makes a big stink about it. But I mean, do you plan on writing a book, or maybe one book, like between the five of you?
Well, I mean, it's just we plan on writing books. But the story of the Central Park Five is still open. It's still ongoing. Until we can close this chapter in our lives and move on, we got to live with it every day. And that's because the city won't let us heal properly.
Yeah.
They keep open. It's like having a scab and somebody keeps picking at it, and that's what we go through.
Oh boy, you're describing it perfectly. I mean, even emotional healing too. Exactly. Like I mean,
exactly.
Well, that goes along the lines of the debt, because the system thrives on keeping people in debt, not just financially, but emotionally and psychologically as well. And I mean, I've been saying this for decades. So exactly. I mean, it doesn't want you to gain any kind of strength. I mean, I just hope that really, like, it gets to just some kind of a critical mass level where this whole system can really just be brought down. I mean, I hope I live to see the day. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah. That's me and you both.
I've been trying to wake, doing my best to, wake people up that like the system doesn't want people. I mean, ever since I was young, I always felt it, that we're being kept down, that we're, the system wants you easy to control. And, if you don't have a really good, strong, healthy family system, you're gonna get caught in it, and there's nothing you can do about it, and unfortunately, I mean, I grew up in divorce, and wasn't the greatest environment, and I kind of learned early like what was going on. Unfortunately, it can be in your house a lot of times. It's not always outside, but a lot of people in some way, that everyone's kind of having their ways of finding out what the system is all about.
That's right. That's right.
And
that's what it's about. It's about experience. At the end of the day, I always tell people, I say, because a lot of people are naive. And when you hear the story of the Central Park Five or you read about it, it sounds like this is scripted. It sounds like it's a fairy tale. And people cannot believe that this happened. And so I always tell them, I say, look, at the end of the day, you're driving in your car and you get pulled over by police. You have two reactions. Either you're afraid or upset. Why? It's all due to experience. Everybody has to go through their own experience to understand what happened or what's going on. And that's what it is. It's just that now it's starting, the awareness is becoming so big, that more and more people are starting to find out that this stuff happens all the time.
I understand you, and I guess we'll just kind of wrap it up in like the next half a minute or so. But that's one thing that I could never understand. It's why does it have to happen to people directly? I mean, why isn't it enough that it happens maybe to someone that they even know, or even someone across the country? I mean, starvation and wars, right? That's not necessarily to us here and now, but it is happening to other people in other parts of the world. Isn't that enough to see it happening to someone else? I mean, by the time it reaches you, it's kind of like too late, like take someone else's word for it, man. Don't wait until it hits you. That's what I gotta say. But
it becomes a bit of selfishness at the end of the day. It's not happening to me, so I don't care. It's when it does hit home.
Yeah, that selfishness is going to cost people. But Ray, I'm giving you the knuckle punch again, and I'm giving you a big bear hug. And
thank you so much. I appreciate
you and
that.
man, and I'll see you on Facebook, and I can't wait to meet you in person.
Same here.
All right. Enjoy your holidays coming up too.
You too. And thank you for having me on the show. It was a pleasure, and it was definitely an honor.
Thank you, Ray. Amen, brother.
All right, sister.
Okay. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
You're listening to Awake Radio. Straight talk for the awake and aware.